Hey, in this video we are going to test Fizz, the program that we implemented over the last video. We shall actually do manual testing. We shall not use any module or any library. We shall actually just do manual coding. We just test Fizz. You also want to know how to manually test your work, but in the future, as a beginner, you'll have to learn these automated tests that will help you using Pytest, UnitTest. There are many more modules that you can use. So we're going to get started. Yeah, my name is Ronnie Atuhaire, and I'm also known as Pytest, and I'm glad that you're here. Thanks for coming. Enjoy. So we're going to first import the Fizz program that we created. As usual, I like doing pseudocode first. So we shall import our Fizz program. Then after importing the Fizz program, we shall remember it is a class. It has a class, so we shall create a project, a new object. From that class, then from there, we are going to have three functions. The first function we are going to have is going to test for Fizz. Then the second function we're going to have is going to test for bars. Then the third is just going to test for Fizz. Okay, then we shall be done. The reason why I'm saying we test for Fizz because remember three represents Fizz. Okay, 3, 6, 9 multiples of 3. Then bars is represented by 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 40, 45. Sorry, 40. Then Fizz is presented by multiples of 15. Those are 15, 30, 45, 60, 75, 90. Those are multiples of 15. That's why you're going to have three functions that are going to help us prove that whatever we are having as our output, or whatever function we're going to do, is going to help us bring out this clearly. So here you can do, there are many ways how you can achieve this. First and foremost, if you're using other modules, you'll be using maybe assert functions that are built with Python. But here, since we're doing it manually, you think and then you ask yourself, what can you do to prove that whatever program is printing is actually correct? So let's get started. So on importing Fizz, we shall just import from, we're going to import the class function, the class from our module Fizz. So we have to make sure that this test Fizz.py is in the same root folder as Fizz. So you just say from Fizz import our function name, which is Fizz. Now when you go back to our Fizz, our program, you realize I had to comment this out. I commented these calls out. This was just testing, so I had to comment this out so that we run, or we can be able to import this function, which is Fizz under the same class name, which is Fizz. Hope that is clear. So after importing the Fizz class, let's create a new object. You can just create the object as test object. Let's create a test object. Then we call our Fizz function. Actually, here you can first call it our class. You can just instantiate the class like this first. Maybe you can also pass in the function, the method under Fizz, the same object. What you can do is you can just maybe call this test object. Then we call this test list. Test list is being instantiated from test object. So there's a function called Fizz buzz. Hope this is clear. Then under that function, we shall just pass in a number. Remember, it takes in an integer. If you go back to Fizz buzz, it takes in an integer which is n. So this n is 100. So we shall use 100. Remember, the reason why we're doing this is because we came down here and read out these print calls, instantiating of new objects. Because this was mainly for Fizz buzz. But here we are testing, that's why we are instantiating a new object out of it. So this will be a test list. So if you print this out, just to be sure, if you print this out, it should be able to print what we had, the previous results that we had. So we come back here and we run. If you see it here, it brings exactly what we had in the last module. Our 3 is Fizz, our 5 is buzz, our 6 is Fizz, our 9 is Fizz, our 15 is Fizz buzz, our 30 is Fizz buzz. So manually you can see that this is Fizz, this is Fizz buzz. But what if the number is too large? What if we do 1,000 here? What if we do 1,000? Will you go on checking for all these other things? Now you see here buzz is 1,000. It's the 1,000. So you can see here buzz goes into 5. That's like 1,000 multiples of 5. So you cannot get to know all these now. This is now using 1,000 as the function. As our program grows, or the integer, the number, or the set, the data set that you're putting in grows, the more complex it becomes. So let's stick to 100. Okay, can go with 1,000 actually, just to be different from the other one. So we just grade this out. So now we create a function that's going to test for Fizz. We call it test Fizz. This takes nothing. Now you think, what are you going to test for? You're testing Fizz. Fizz, remember Fizz are multiples of 3. So since they are multiples of 3, we can create, maybe we can check and see all the indices those are the index of all the numbers, all the items in this list that we have here in the test list. If that index is equaling to a particular, maybe is equaling to multiples of 3, it's in multiples of 3, so we expect we expect that program to be Fizz, should be Fizz accurate. So, but remember, in Python or in all other programming languages, indexes start from 0. So having that thought in mind, you shall maybe just create an array list, a container. You can just call it multiple, maybe you can call it multiples of 3. Then after multiples of 3, we just make it empty. Then we're going to here to use a for loop to check for the indices that are here. So to achieve this, to check the indexes or the indices, we need to use a for loop, but there are many ways of doing this. But in this particular way, we're going to use enumerate. Enumerate is a good function in Python. It helps us give us index and then the item. So we shall say for index, then item in enumerate. Now enumerate takes in a list object or anything that is being passed through. Majorly, I think it's a list object. You can read the documentation. So it takes in a list object, which is going to be a test list. So a test list goes in here. Then we are going to check if that index or if the item is Fizz. Basically, you're testing for Fizz. If Fizz is in this test list, so we expect its index added 1 unto it to be the multiples of 3. So basically here what we are saying is, if item in that index, like in that list, if item is equal to Fizz, you have to be sure of the particular spelling that you used. If item equals to Fizz, what we want is, we want to append, we want to append the index of that list. But remember, index starts from 0, so that means we have to add a 1 here so that we achieve what we want. So this will, if it is at 0, that means it's count number 1, the first item. If it's at index 1, that means number 2, so number 2 item. So that means if you have an item, let's say Fizz that's at index 2, the first Fizz, it's at index 2. If that's index 2, that means we expect a 3. So that's why we are appending all these indices. We are just appending all the indices of Fizz that are in this list. Remember, our list has 1,000 items. So from there, we can maybe use our return function. Then we return multiples of 3. Then you save. After saving, now you call your function. Call your function. Doesn't take anything. Maybe here before you call it, we shall create a print statement saying testing Fizz. So let's save that. Let's first run this and see what it gives us. It's good to keep running your programs at levels, at unit levels. If you get an error, you just fix it there and then. So if you run this, it gives us an empty list. Why? Because you look through your code. So normally here we need a closing. You have to close the for loop, because you see the return statement where it is. It's basically I didn't append anything. So you need to close this for loop. We just bring the return statement exactly under the for loop. So if you run this again, it should be able to work. Yes. So here we are testing that Fizz, it's at 3, 6, 9, 12, 18, 21, 24. So the list continues in. So every number that is in here, that means it is a multiple of 3, or it is exactly divisible by 3, or if you divide it by 3, it gives a modulus of 0, a remainder of 0. See, this is what we're talking about. So if you divided this, it will give you 3, 3, 3 with a remainder of 0. So that means it's multiple of 3 and it's exactly divisible by 3. So manual testing can be monotonous if the program is very huge, but in the later tests we shall be using other unit tests, Pytest and other functions or other modules that are in Python, like assert, what. We shall be seeing how we shall use. Let's stick to this program. This is a beginner series program. We want also to know how to do these things manually. So we know that our first program is running very well. So we can actually comment out this. So basically that means you're doing the same thing even for these lists, for these other objects that you're going to do. For, let's say, for Fizz, for the bars, for Fizz bars. So what you can do actually, you can just copy this. Just going to replicate this, but we're going to do it for bars. So here you say test bars. Now these are going to be multiples of 5. Now here we are testing bars. And for index test list, we are using the same list. Remember, that one remains. So here just looking for a particular word which is bars in the list. Then here you append multiples of 5. Then you return multiples of 5. So you save this. So if you come here and call the function, it should be able to work too. Doesn't take anything. You save. I'm using Atom. You have to save every time you do your work. So here it gives us 5, 10, 20. Okay, the reason why it's giving us this, remember, it's because our 15 falls under Fizz bars. So we don't expect a 15 in our program. We don't expect a 15. Just like up here, we don't expect a 15 too. Because remember, program is Fizz bars. We are testing for Fizz buzz. So 15 is for something else. So if you see 15 in your program, that means it's an error. If you see 30, that means it's an error. So you need to also have a function that will run through and test and see all these, that there's nothing like multiple of 15. That's why you need now to join your programs, so maybe under a class or under something, so that you run and see that your things are working very well. But for now, we know we are good because we can test with maybe the first by looking at using our eyes, which is not good actually, but it's good for beginners if you're learning to get to look through and be like, oh, I expected a 15 here as a multiple of what? A multiple of 3, but it's not there. So basically that means it's because of the Fizz buzz program. So our program, that means it's running accurately. So you can actually now comment this out. Then we do the same thing for the last one. That is the function test for Fizz buzz. So here we're testing for Fizz buzz. So here we're looking for multiples of 15. We're testing for Fizz buzz. Test list, we're testing for Fizz buzz. Now, to be sure, you can first check and see what did you use as the Fizz buzz name, as the name, the spelling, because remember it's very key. See, it has space. It has space in between Fizz and buzz. So we come back to our program. Put in space between Fizz and buzz. Then these are multiples of 15. These are also multiples of 15. Then here we're going to print Fizz buzz. I'm going to test Fizz buzz. Yeah, hope we are good. So we save that again. Come and run your program. So here we expect a 15 as the first number, 30, 45, 60, 75, 90, 105, 120, 135. As you can see, if you just means if you got this and divided it by 15, it should be giving you something. So actually these are also multiples of 3 and something, and some are multiples of 3 and some are multiples of, majorly all they are multiples of 5 actually, but some are also multiples of 3. So I think our program is good. It's good. It's running very well. This is how you manually test Fizz buzz. This is just manual testing. Nothing much like using UnitTest, using Pytest, using all these other frameworks that are available that you can use. Otherwise, thank you so much. Hit that subscribe button. Stay tuned for our next video. Stay blessed.